Okay, tonight we're going to have some fun again, and this is going to actually be another one of those major geek out sessions where I take something and run with it way too far. Um, it just it just goes to prove that anything worth doing well is worth overdoing. So the situation is earlier this week, I showed a couple developers how to start up programs with RunAs. We had a situation where we've got two different domains and they were logging in and logging out every time they had to switch between users, and I was like, what the hell are you doing, right? So I showed them how to use RunAs. They thought it was pretty useful, so I thought I'd give you guys a little quick lesson on RunAs. Only I'm going to take it a little bit further. I'm going to show you guys just how to do RunAs at all. And then we'll actually talk about RunAs and talk about some problems and how it works and stuff like that. So if you don't care about any of that stuff and all you want to do is learn how to use a program as another user, then all you have to do is watch this first part of the video and you'll be good. Now, a really brief discussion on why to use RunAs to begin with. There are several instances as a DBA where you would want to use RunAs, or as a developer too, right? You're accessing a box that you need to access with alternate credentials, or as a DBA, what I most often use it as is going to a user's workstation and needing to do something, in SQL on the server under my credentials and not wanting to log them out or walk all the way back across the building or something. I can just fire up, SMS or SEM and as a RunAs as me, and I can reset their permissions, and I can sit there and toggle between the two windows back and forth, and tweak something until I get it just right, and then close it down, and my little personal session finishes, and all is well, right? So that's one instance. Another one is inviting users over to your workstation. Somebody comes up to your workstation and says this doesn't work. I appear to not have the rights, so what you do is you fire up a RunAs and say, here, log in, let me see what you're doing from here. Maybe it's a firewall issue, right? I mean, maybe they can't get to something, maybe they're not getting to the server appropriately because their box isn't getting through the firewall and yours is. So you can test their database permissions from your box and then worry about the firewall issues later. So there's a couple production support reasons why you would need to know how to do a RunAs and all of the other standard stuff, right? Okay, so I'm going to stop talking about that, and I'm going to please the people who just want to see the command and how it works. So since this is mainly a SQL tutorial, I'm going to do everything here around SQL, right? So I've got SMS right here. I'm going to double click on it. This is my lesser server, by the way, so it takes everything a minute to happen, right? Okay, see here I'm logging on with Windows. I hit connect. One of these days, okay, good. And you see it comes up as the admin, right? So now, if I want to run this under a different account, I right-click on it and say Run As, and let's run this as there we go. Run it as VMware instead. And this whole box is VMware that I end up blowing away like, oh, I don't know, once a month, once every 2 weeks, whenever I need it, right? It's just one of my generic lab boxes. You can see I've never logged in here. It's setting everything up for the first time. I'll pause it until it's done, I think. Well, okay, here we are. So now I'm going to log in with Windows Authentication again. And you can see I'm logged in under VMware, right? Right, okay. So that's all good. Let me close this out. So, if you never wanted to learn anything else about RunAs, you can stop right there. That's how you do it. You right-click, you go RunAs, and then you specify your credentials, right? Now, you can also do this from the command line. So you can type RunAs, and then whack user : VMware, and then give it the program name, and you can. This is in the path, so I don't have to type the, the full path to it. But if it's not in the path, you're going to have to, and it's going to ask you for your password, and then it's going to launch your program. Connect, and you can see here that I'm logged in as VMware again. Fair enough. So you can see how that would come in handy in all types of situations, right? Okay, so I've covered the GUI, I've covered the command line. Now, what is it exactly that RunAs does? This is what we're going to cover next, right? What exactly does RunAs do? What it actually does is it kind of brings up, it's a program, right? It's just RunAs exe. That's how we were able to call it from the command line. But what it does is it actually kicks off sort of a mini logon process, okay? So, what it does is it creates a new login session, and it even gets a new token. So, I mean, it does that full login session getting a new token for the other user, and then it creates a new job that that'll contain the new process and any child processes that it spawns. So anything that you spawn as a result of your new program, as long as it's running as a child process, will run under the new account privileges as well. Now that's an extremely simplified version of what it does, right? I mean, it's got other things that it does specifically, but those are but that's the high level view. It creates a new session and even gives you a new token for that little session, and it creates sort of a job or a container that that holds the new processes and the child processes. Now, how does it do that? That's really sort of that's really sort of a cool deal. I like the way this works. Let's see, how do I get this? Okay, that's done. Let's see. Okay, let's do this. Let's say I right-click here and do RunAs, right? We all know it's going to come up under whatever pretext I want it to, right? But what actually turns that on and turns that off? As it so happens, what's responsible for this, if you come in here in services, you come down here, where are you? There you are. That's what the secondary logon does. The secondary logon service is what allows you to do this RunAs process, and it's the one that actually does all of this extra logging and stuff that we just talked about. All of the getting a new token and creating a new login session and all that stuff. That's secondary login is what actually does all this. Okay, so I've just proven to you that I can do a RunAs, right? Now, what happens if I turn this service off? Actually, you're going to be kind of surprised here. Let me refresh it, prove to you that it's off. If I come here and do a RunAs, we'll do that one, that's fine. And do, let me do this one instead. Okay, so it started. We don't have to log in. You know it's going to be under that context, right? Okay, because look but it's still off, right? But look, when I refresh that, it automatically starts again. So even if secondary logon is off, it's going to start again when you do a run as. Now let's see what happens when I disable it. It clearly can't start again if it's disabled, right? So now when I do my run as following user, there we go. The service cannot be started either because it's disabled or because it has no enabled devices associated with it. But you notice how it doesn't tell you what service it is, right? It just tells you that SQL Workbench can't be started. So when you're doing this, you have to have secondary logon service at least enabled. Whether it be manual or automatic, it doesn't matter. It will turn it back on. So again, I'll leave this turned off. I'll even refresh it to prove it. See, it's off. And when I come here, while that's doing that, it started the service. So there you go. We're in like Flynn, right? And there we are, logged in as VMware again. Okay, that's all well and good, right? Here, we'll close that. Now, one thing I think I forgot to mention is if I double click on this, it's going to bring it up under my session. If I right click on it and say run as, it'll give me this box and let me choose the run as. But there's a way to make sure, if you go into properties, there's a way to make sure that it will do it, that it'll bring up the run as all the time. So maybe you want to switch back and forth all the time and you don't want to have to right click. It's kind of lazy, but you know, maybe that's your goal. So you go into advanced, you go into properties, and on the shortcut tab you go into advanced and you click run with different credentials, and then all I have to do now is when I double click, it'll automatically come up with it and I can specify my user if I want to do that every single time. So that's just something you can do. I'm going to turn that off now because I don't really like it. That's something else you can do. Okay. You could also call that command line in a batch file, right? You'll probably still have to type your password, but you can specify, run as, whack user : username SQL WB, and then double click on the batch file instead, and then all you have to do is enter in your password. So that's another way that you could launch it. Now, one of the things that RunAs doesn't do. Okay, let me talk about this first instead. Looking at the control panel, you can run all types of things, right? I can run all types of things. Say I've got RunAs here. I don't think I have it here. Nope, I sure don't. Yep, I don't have it there, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And I shouldn't have it here either. Nope. And I don't have it here either. Nope. Now, for control panel items, if I come into here and I go settings, control panel. Now, for these items, if I want to say like date and time, you notice how all I have when I right click is open. But if you hold down the shift and right click, you'll get the run as. Okay? And that doesn't work for every single control panel applet, but it works for a good portion of them. I don't know if it works with this one. Yep, it works with that one. But I don't think it'll work for... will it work for power? Yep. There's a couple of these that it doesn't work for. I'm not sure which ones. Folder options, fonts. There you go, fonts. So it doesn't work for fonts, and I'm sure there's another one in here too. But anyway, there are some others in there. I think they're special types of Windows installer icons that don't work with RunAs directly. I think MSN Messenger is one of them, if I remember correctly, and fonts, of course, in here. So anyway, if you're in the control panel and you want to do this, just shift right click, and you can have your RunAs. Now, one of the things you're going to find here, is that here, I'm just going to sit here for a second and talk for just a few seconds. That this doesn't really work with Explorer or Internet Explorer. It works with Internet Explorer, but not from the desktop, right? Now, the reason why is because, remember when I said before that part of the secondary logon actually creates, sort of a new job or a new container that the new process and all of its child processes contain, and they're all gonna be called under that same session, right? Well, the same thing goes with Explorer. Anything that launches under Explorer is a child process of Explorer. So anything that Explorer spawns, so it's going to run as a child option of Explorer, which is why you don't get it here for IE from there, and why you don't get it even when you shift click, because here on the desktop it is a child of Explorer. If you come down here to the quick launch and right click, you notice how you get the run as. So, Explorer doesn't really work well with it. If I come here to Windows and I go down here to Explorer, there it is, and right click, I get the run as. That's only because I have this option turned on. I'll show you in a minute. So there's an option that you have to turn on in Windows. Here, I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, I'm back. I wanted to turn a couple of things off because I wanted to be able to prove my point. Now, by default, when I come in here to Explorer, let's say I want to run VMware. I want to run a copy of Explorer as VMware because, lots of reasons. For any other reason that you'd want to do that, right? Directory access, network access, stuff like that. You may want to run under separate credentials for Explorer. And clearly, if I start another Explorer, it's actually going to pass off. It's going to pass off the running to the parent process. Sorry, I lost my head there for a second. So what I mean is, let's take something like MS Word, or MS Word is a good example. You'll run into this a lot with MS Word. If you try to do run as with Word directly, and you have another copy of Word already running, well, Word's going to automatically look that there's another copy of it running, and it's going to pass the execution off onto that parent process, and your new process is going to be started under the original credentials because it didn't actually launch them. So that's the problem you're going to get into, that you may need to run you may need to run Explorer as a new user and then go to Word and open up Word under those new credentials. And like I said, stuff for like file and directory access, stuff like that, right? So, with that in mind, if I come here and do this for Explorer, absolutely nothing happens, right? I can do it at the command line. I can say command line. I can say run as user. Oops. User colon. VMware Explorer. It'll ask for everything, and it just won't do it. And that's because by default, this whole handing off of permissions thing that we just talked about, and clearly you can't have, and with Explorer being your main interface, you can't really run two of those at the same time. I mean, it's you can, but Windows tries to keep everything under the same context. So in order to do this, you have to set it up a special way, and it's not hard. You just have to know where it is, right? So what you have to do is I have to come here to Tools, Folder Options, View, and this little thing in here that says Launch Folder Windows on a Separate Process. Blam. Tell it OK, and now I'm ready to start Explorer. Now, I'm going to show you something here. Where did it go? There it is. Okay. So I've got Explorer here. Now watch. If I do this, nothing still happens. So didn't I just say that if I set this up, then I can run it as another user? And I did say that, but the problem is that setting this up is on a per user basis, and both users have to be set up for this in order for it to work. And I know what you're thinking automatically is, but that's BS. If I'm doing this, I clearly don't want to log in as the other user. If I'm going to log in the other user to set it up, then I might as well stay there and do my thing. And you're absolutely right. I've got no problems with that line of thinking. But there is a good way around this. The funny thing is, like I said before, you can come here to IE and do a run as that. Not that. You can do a run as with IE. So now I can say like that and start up IE as a different user. Okay, now I'm online, so what, right? But if I go to a local drive, say just C:, now it looks an awful lot like Explorer. And now when I go to Tools and Folder Options, remember this is as the other user, right? I can come here, launch folder in new window, blam, good, I got that. So now when I close this, where are you? And I do a run as now. It should work. There we go. And now I have a copy of Explorer running as my other user. So now I've got two user contexts for Explorer. Now there are ways that you can tell these apart, right? You can especially visually, you can set a different folder background for the one so that you always know which one you're in. And maybe that's a topic for another time. I don't want to overdo it that much. But anyway, I think that's a pretty good stopping point right there. I showed you an awful lot with RunAs, and there's really a lot more to it than this. How RunAs plays with different programs and different applications in Windows, and even on different versions of Windows, because it does something completely different in Vista than it does in Server 03 or XP, and I'm working on Server 03 here. It does something completely different on Vista. It's a little bit less intuitive in Vista, if you ask me. But since nobody asked me, then I guess I'll shut up. But anyway, that's those are a little bit past the basics for RunAs, probably more than you guys wanted to know. But it's all very useful information. So go out there and conquer all of your users' desktops. Good luck.